Welcome to Behind the Sports Medicine Podcast, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on the evolving world of sports science. I'm Andrew Rizza, an athlete trainer with decades of experience in professional, collegiate, and high school sports.
And I'm Cameron Roth, an orthopedic surgeon and a consultant for the Chicago White Sox.
In each episode, we'll explore the real-world challenges and opportunities facing today's human performance professionals.
Our hands-on experience is transforming sports medicine and breaking barriers through innovation and teamwork.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Behind the Sports Medicine Podcast. Today we are joined by Erica Mulholland, former All-American soccer player at Johns Hopkins, semi-pro player in Brazil, strength coach, clinician, and author of the Female Athlete book. Erica, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys.
So Erica, thank you for joining us. Let's cut straight to the chase. You're an expert on the adolescent female athlete. Let's start with ACL injuries. Why do you know that they're still so prevalent in your adolescent female athletes, especially soccer players?
Well, we used to think it was just a female issue, that girls have wider hips or a larger Q angle, and they had different mechanics than males, or there's hormonal factors at play. That's more of the recent argument, but it's really more a training load problem. So it's not a female problem. It's a lot of these girls are detrained to handle what's required of them nowadays. So if we look back to when I was growing up in the 90s and early 2000s playing, youth sports looked very different. We would practice maybe just 2 times a week, have one game on the weekends. We would have seasons off from our sport to try other activities. But now what we're seeing is these young girls are playing their sport year round. They're practicing more year round. They're practicing 3 to 4 times a week. If you're on the travel soccer team, they're sometimes playing 2 games back to back on the weekends. And the youth space is the only space that does that. You don't see college or pro athletes playing 2 games on the weekend because it's impossible to recover. So there's a big load problem as far as too much sport-specific skill work and doing the movements that actually degrade the tissue and they don't really provide an adaptation to strengthen the muscles, the bones, and the joints. And a lot of girls they aren't getting in the gym because, there's many reasons for this. They might not be educated on the benefits. They might be skeptical. A lot of the issues also, families just don't carve out the time for it because schedules are so busy, which we can talk about later in this episode, solutions to that. But it really is too much sport load, and these girls are detrained, meaning in strength qualities, the fundamentals of human movement, coordination, balance, body awareness, to really meet the demands of their sport. So the strength piece is really the foundation to everything that they do. So that's the main problem. And a lot of that can just kind of offset the mechanics argument because mechanics are more of an output. They're not an input. So the input is, okay, does the athlete have the capacity to handle the sport, or are they too weak and they fatigue quickly? Well, that's going to lead to poor mechanics. So mechanics aren't the start of the injury process. They're a result of detrained athletes who fatigue very quickly and have too much sport load. So that's kind of my long-winded answer on all this, but I'm very sick of the argument that it's a female anatomy or hormonal problem.
Looking to get back in the game and feel your absolute best? Boston Orthopedics and Wellness has you covered. At Boston Orthopedics and Wellness, they're all about helping you recover faster, re-energize your body, and truly revitalize your health. Whether you're dealing with an injury, looking for cutting-edge recovery therapies, or exploring innovative treatments for orthopedic conditions, their expert team is ready to guide you every step of the way. From advanced regenerative treatments like PRP, stem cell therapy, and peptides, to performance and wellness services like NAD+ therapy, men's health optimization, and weight management programs, they offer a comprehensive, personalized approach to getting you back to peak performance. This isn't just treatment. It's a path to moving better, feeling stronger, and living pain-free. Boston Orthopedics and Wellness is where your comeback starts. Mention Behind the Sports Medicine Podcast to receive 15% off your first scheduled appointment. Learn more and start your journey today at bostonorthopedicandwellness.com. You build recovery plans, rehab protocols, return to sport timelines, because you know outcomes don't happen by accident. Your financial life deserves the same intention. Bode is a fee-only fiduciary firm that starts with a plan. Your goals planning statement, a personalized roadmap that keeps your money aligned with where you're actually headed. Built around your life, backed by conviction. See what real planning looks like at beckbode.com.
I mean, I'm glad you led with that because Cam and I were talking about this briefly before. We see it in our environment in the Northeast where it's hard to play year round. They're playing indoor, outdoor. Why do you think this has been such a big shift in playing more? And how do we change it?
Well, two words, private equity.
Yeah.
That's really the root of the problem. How we change it, I mean, I think at this point we are in very deep. I think the parents are going to have to opt out and say no, at least at the younger ages. At like pre-growth spurt, pre-age 12, 13 in girls, they shouldn't be playing year-round serious travel soccer, traveling across state borders, and they're void of human movement and learning those motor skills because the truth is kids aren't getting outside as much as they used to. So now us performance coaches have to give that to these young kids. So I think parents have to really get really clear if they have those younger ages, those under 12s, that we don't need to be on a travel team at the youngest age. I think parents fall into the trap that if they're not on the top team, they're not playing year round, they're not doing skill sessions year round, that their kid will fall behind and they're not going to be on the top team when they hit puberty. Well, that's not the truth. We look at a lot of great anecdotes from some of the greats of women's soccer. Alex Morgan started travel soccer at age 13 or 14. Abby Wambach dabbled in a lot of sports. Mia Hamm, one of the biggest soccer legends, played football and a bunch of other sports before she got serious about soccer in high school. So not only are there a lot of great anecdotes, but there's a lot of research and evidence base to support that really young ones should get a variety of movement so that they can develop those basic motor skills so that when they do hit puberty, they're more well-rounded athletes and they're not feeling as awkward in their bodies, or they can decelerate efficiently. ACL injuries happen during a plant, during a deceleration, and a lot of girls during that growth spurt, they don't have the foundation of motor skills. So yeah, the growth spurt hits them hard. They're really awkward. They don't know how to move. So I do see that's the time frame, ages 12 to 14, when girls are getting a lot of ACL tears because they don't have that movement base young. Because since age 7, little Sally was on a travel soccer team and she was playing soccer like it was a job, which is the choice of the parent at the end of the day. I don't think that was her choice. So I think the parents, they can turn this ship around. I really believe that, but people are going to have to be okay with sticking out like a sore thumb.
You know, I've seen a shift in I've been in high school athletics for almost 30 years. They used to have a rule in Massachusetts, and I don't know about other states, where you couldn't play another sport in season. It was against the regulations through the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association, and that has changed. They allow kids to play club sports, town sports, go to ID camps, all these things. What needs to change, do you think? Does it need to be administratively at the state level, or is it a parental thing, or is it both?
Yeah, I think definitely the parents first. I think the parents just really need to educate themselves because a lot of parents do fear that their daughter is going to get an ACL injury, but very few of them take action to do anything about it. So if I can tell parents to do a few things, it's making sure your younger daughter pre-growth spurt is getting a variety of movement. If she's not getting it from training, then she has to do it in the household. The whole family has to be on board with this. Otherwise, the kid won't be set up for success and they won't become a well-rounded athlete. And then for the girls who are maybe on the cusp of puberty, get it and they're ready to learn and take instruction, work with a strength professional. Work with a strength professional who understands long-term athletic development and who understands growth and maturation. I think a lot of parents fear, well, should my 10 or 11-year-old do strength training? Well, it's pretty nuanced. I can't tell people, at an exact age when to start strength training because it's going to look different for everyone. But If you have an 11-year-old girl, for example, who is an early mature, or she maybe could be 13 biologically, and she takes instruction well, she wants to get into a gym setting, I would say she's ready for strength training with a strength coach. But if you have an 11-year-old who's more of a late mature, they might need still more of those fun task-oriented games. With girls like that in my gym, we still do tag, balance, gymnastics type work. And then when they're ready, we would do external load with dumbbells, and then we eventually progress that. So I think parents need to work with a professional in their area who understands youth long-term development, because there's there's a lot of strength coaches on Instagram. Just because they're a strength coach doesn't mean they're good. I mean, anyone can make a kid go through a workout. It's a very unregulated industry. You see some 10, 11-year-olds doing crappy 24-inch box jumps when they haven't even mastered a basic landing on flat ground. So, and they're falling over and losing their balance. So it has to be someone who understands the starting point and that gradual progression.
So in the same vein, we interviewed Dr. James Andrews, who's a preeminent orthopedic surgeon for National Football League and Major League Baseball, and he's very involved with youth sports and overuse. And he works with the MLB for Pitch Smart, which is preventing overuse injuries in youth baseball players. So not pitching more than 80 pitches a game, taking at least 5 days rest, not playing more than 8 months of the year. Does FIFA or the MLS or the National Women's Soccer League or any of your governing bodies have something similar in place, or are you on the forefront of bringing that to fruition?
Well, my husband actually works in pitching load management as well.
Perfect.
And we were talking about this morning, and he was telling me that baseball's actually really behind soccer. Soccer is leaning more into technology for load management. Baseball's getting there with sensors and not just relying on pitch counts, because pitch counts don't include like the velocity. And I know way too much about baseball now. But yeah, soccer, it's getting better. And actually in the youth space, a lot of companies recognize that youth clubs don't have the budget for GPS sensors and load management. So one of my friends, Matt Danaher, who is a soccer coach and a strength and conditioning coach, so he's like the best of both worlds, he created an app that I use for my players. It's called Player Pulse, and it's RPE based, so ratings of perceived exertion, and athletes they'll rate every single training session they do. So their practices, how intense it was on a scale of 1 to 10, and then how many minutes they played and trained, and it calculates the load based on those two data points. And then it provides a score of, okay, are you doing too much load, or are you actually detraining and not preparing enough for, your 2-game weekend or that tournament at the end of the month? I think undertraining is as much of a problem as overtraining. So as an example, if you have summer off, so summer is coming up, you have summer off, but then you go back in August for a crazy preseason where you're doing a ton of fitness tests and scrimmages. If you take summer fully off, or you're just plopped on a couch, you're doing no strength, speed, or conditioning work to build up for that preseason, then come preseason, huge load spike, you're going to fatigue a lot faster. And that essentially goes from undertraining to overtraining. So undertraining can be just as much of a problem. So there's that balance between the two. And I think soccer is ahead in this, but I wish more people knew about Matt's app, because I think it's amazing. And it's like a good low-hanging fruit that is very accessible, budget-friendly, pretty good compliance rate with getting the kids to put in their practice minutes and game minutes and all that. But some coaches just aren't open to it. They don't understand what load management is. I think load management's the hardest thing I have to explain to a lot of parents and coaches. There's a lot of old school people that think you have to have high intensity days every training session. But I try to simplify load management is, you want to make your high days really high and keep your low days low. It's pretty simple, but some people, they struggle to really grasp that concept.
Can you run us through a typical training session for your adolescent athletes? So you could probably talk about this for hours, but what specifically are you focusing on? What are some examples of some drills you're running through and some education that you're providing?
Yeah, so for the most part, I mean, right now everyone's in season, so I really only get 2 months in the summer to change the program to more of an off season. So right now during in season, the focus is we always do plyometrics year round to keep athletes fast and twitchy, but the volume just changes. So we'll do maybe lower intensity plyos, or if we do high intensity, it's very low rep. So just enough to get their nervous system excited, but not fatigued, because a lot of them go from my sessions to then their practice. So we'll do plyos within warm up. And then if the week allows and they don't have 2 games that weekend, we'll do 1 to 2 sprints, working on acceleration and top speed. So I don't like to go more than a few sprints during the season, again, just to avoid fatigue. And then we'll lift after that. So we'll do just the basics, squat, split squat, so quad dominant movements, hex bar deadlift, single leg RDLs, and then any accessory movements like pull-ups, rows, just to balance the upper body as well. Because I think a lot of soccer players think they should be all legs, but they really need to have the strength all around to be able to shield themselves, go into contact with confidence, be able to have a strong upper body for better sprint mechanics. So we do just the general strength. And I forgot one thing. We do in warm up. I've added this in the past year. We do a lot of PE based games too, because I realize no one's getting PE anymore. No one's getting gymnastics work. We'll do handstands. I have a rock climbing wall in my gym. We'll do tumbling, rolling. We'll do tug of war. So just fun games that work on those different movement skills that just warm up the athletes, get them engaged, and they look forward to doing those games. And then we'll do the traditional plyos and lifting at the end. So yeah, it's pretty simple. And then in the off season, what I've really changed is I might add a little bit more conditioning if their practices and games have completely stopped. We'll do conditioning in small sided games. I like to keep them on the ball. I don't like to condition a lot off the ball because I want them to be able to think fast and train to do it under fatigue. So I don't really like to do like the beep test or any of that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think that all the things that you said are things that we talk about with training, especially with the athletes. I deal with, 250 athletes every season, a multitude of different sports. And we talk about all those exercises, which are simple to do if you're educated on how to do them. We've been dealing with this for many years and we're still going to deal with it. Do you think we're overcomplicating ACL prevention and trying to reinvent the wheel?
I think so. I think that's a good way to put it. And I also think people maybe are trying to just provide a quick solution or give the illusion that there's a quick thing we can do to prevent. I mean, you see a lot of, oh, just do this 10-minute warm up for ACL prevention, but that's not doing anything. You need a consistent program year round that really develops strength relative to body weight, power, deceleration under high forces, and progressing those exercises. A lot of these warm-ups don't have progression. They're just body weight movements, and ACL injuries happen in forces of up to 8 times body weight.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think a dinky balance drill at the field is doing much. I mean, a novice might get a new stimulus from that, but a year from now, they need a challenge. They need to do a single leg hop or a depth drop and progress that, or deep tier plyometrics. So yeah, I think people just are forgetting what the lowest hanging fruit is, but consistent strength training is hard for people.
Yeah.
It's hard, but I'm on a crusade now to really educate people on the importance of in-season work. And I used to not really be pushy about it with people I work with. I would do like my summer off-season program and I would never give a transition into in-season. I just assumed, oh, people are going to continue in season. But I had to educate people at the end of summer, hey, we worked so hard for the past 2 months. And if we stop this for even just 4 weeks, we lose a strength stimulus, and that's the gains start to decline around 4 weeks. So I try to educate more to my people here in Tampa. and on my podcast and on social media. And I've seen great success actually with a 1 time a week strength at the very least, only if you do it year round,
Mhm.
because that compounds over many sessions. And I've seen great improvements in strength with that. Girls deadlifting 2 times body weight now, squatting 2 times body weight from just doing 1 time a week for a year. But I did the math, and the girls who did the 1 time a week year round, as opposed to the girls who came in the summer for 2 months, 4 times a week, the in-season girls were getting way more sessions than them and making those gains, because I think it's more gradual in season. We don't have to rush it. Whereas in the summer, like, I mean, I don't want to rush them and load them too much, because two months is not that long. So I've seen a lot of success with 1 time a week. And I've recently started to do a hybrid program where if you do the 1 time a week, I give you a second day to get done at home. More of the fundamentals, the heavy loading and advanced stuff you have to do in person with me, but just fundamentals of movement, just like crawling movements, different plank variations, hip work, pull-ups to do on their own. So that's helped a lot too, because I think people, they get scared because their schedules are so busy, and just avoiding an extra commute is a big deal for them. So I've kind of had to adjust to ensure that these kids still got in season in, because I don't want people doing the 2 month summer program, then I don't see you for 10 months. And then we kind of have to start back at square one and kind of at the weight you left off with last summer. So yeah, those are never fun situations, but it is what it is. And some people do it, but the in-season 1 time a week has been amazing.
You mentioned earlier, like we had those old school coaches, and we still have those coaches, right, in our industry, and we're always going to have them. For those coaches that think if they miss a practice day because they're getting in the weight room, like, what's the message to them about how to better care for their athletes?
I like to tell parents and coaches there just needs to be more of a balance of the sports skill work and the strength work, because the strength work underpins your performance, and it makes you resilient to injury. And I think with the coaches, they get worried that a weight room session is maybe going to fatigue their players, but I just try to comfort them and explain what we're doing as far as set and rep schemes, or if we are doing higher rep, it's lighter weight. And I don't want to program my workouts to make your players perform poorly at practice. I want them to do well at practice. And I don't want what I do to take away. It should just add to it and support what you do. And I always tell coaches and parents, us strength coaches, we're not asking for a lot. We're asking for 1 to 2 hours a week, consistently year round. Just carve out that time for strength training. It's not like we're asking for, 2 hour workouts twice a week. That's really stressful. I mean, we can accomplish a lot in an hour. I would say we can even accomplish a lot in just a 30-minute in-season workout. So I write that for some of the remote athletes I work with. They just want a short, efficient workout, just enough to improve and get something done and to be good for practice. So yeah, I just tell people we're not asking for much and we can adapt over here, and we want girls to go to practice feeling energized. And the point of our job is to keep them healthy. So why would we purposely fatigue them from our sessions?
Do you see a lot of buy-in from the parents, or do you get pushback?
I do. Recently I have, because I finally started to explain myself better. I used to just not educate a lot. I just assumed that parents were researching or knew this information, but now I always tell parents my 2 cents. And most are on board, and then you have some that are like, "No, we'll see you next summer." And look, I'm not going to like pull your hand over here. I'll say my piece initially, but then you can make the decision. And usually there's like one or two that will do the in season. You get a few every year, but it is what it is. You just hope those players continue to improve, stay healthy. But yeah, I think the education and explaining in a way that parents understand is critical. One thing parents also fear is what the coaches fear, is that weight room sessions will fatigue their daughter, or it might be doing too much. That's what I always hear. Is she doing too much or overdoing? And I say, well, if you think about it at practice, how many reps is your daughter sprinting, cutting, changing direction? And they're like, oh, probably over 100. And I go, yeah, that's a lot of volume on the quads, the hamstrings, the bones, the ligaments. How many reps am I doing on maybe a hex bar deadlift in season? Sometimes I do just a 3x2 set rep scheme. That is nothing compared to what they're doing at practice. So I try to explain it in that way too, so they understand that I'm not giving them so much volume to crush them before they go to practice.
You played college soccer at a very high level in the US, and then you also played at a very high level internationally in Brazil. Do you see a difference between the American way of approaching this issue and an international way?
Well, I think all around women's soccer is allergic to the weight room. Yeah, I don't think it really varies by country too much. I think it's gotten better. I actually had a friend who was the Brazil national team head of strength and conditioning at the last World Cup. So, they were doing all the basics. They were doing hex bar deadlifts, split squats, lunges, all those things, which is great. So I think you're starting to see more of it, but I think a lot of these women aren't loading heavy enough. I think a lot of them are being underestimated. I think adolescent girls are being underestimated and just sticking with a 25-pound goblet squat, which is not enough. And I always talk to one of my colleagues, Carmen Bott. She's also a strength coach. She's in Canada, and she works with a lot of women's rugby players. And she says, Erica, if you put a women's rugby player against a women's soccer player in the weight room, it would be night and day, because the culture is different with women's rugby. And I think women's rugby does have less ACLs than women's soccer. And rugby is a very rough sport.
Mhm.
So interesting, but women's rugby players are truly preparing for the demands. So again, not a female issue. It's, do they have the capacity for their sport and to handle those high speed movements and decelerate? So I think women's soccer players need to not underestimate themselves in the gym.
So, what do you think separates a good strength coach from a strength coach who's not that great?
Oh, yeah, I've actually been thinking about this one a lot. I think the best strength coaches know how to connect with their athletes, and if they're working with young athletes, connect with the parents. Because you can't have anyone be consistent with your program if you're not passionate and you can't get people to buy into what you're doing and understand the why behind it. So I think it's key for strength coaches to build those relationships first, and then, like, obviously programming is important, but I think the human aspect's really critical, and also having a good culture to your gym and your environment. Our culture is very fun but competitive, and I have a lot of high expectations for my girls. We get after it, we lift heavy, and that's just the culture. They know it and they love it. I think that's what's helped me do so well, is the relationship piece, because we are in the people business, we are in the service industry, and we are working with humans. So we can't just be these strength coaches that are like, I have the best program, I'm the best programmer. Well, if you don't have a personality, and when I talk to you, it's like talking to a wall, that's a problem. Like, you're really going to struggle, because you do work with humans, and it is a social industry. So I think that's what sets good strength coaches apart.
So, soccer is almost an endurance sport. I mean, you have the athletes who are playing 90 full minutes plus stoppage time, running multiple miles. How do you emphasize and train for endurance?
I don't see a need for it unless I'm working with athletes that don't play a lot of minutes. Most of my girls played the full 90 for their club team. So they're getting a ton of endurance between those 1 to 2 game weekends. And then a lot of my girls practice 4 days a week. So I just see it as in buckets. Their endurance bucket is full, but what's not full? Well, plyometrics, elasticity, speed, more of your explosive work, and then building the strength and working on those athletic qualities. But, I've had some non-starters that don't play a lot of minutes, or, I'll have maybe a girl who's in her school season and the school team practices, they're just standing around, and It's just not that intense. So we do have to do some extra conditioning, but those are the rare cases I'll do it.
So if you're talking to coaches and trying to educate coaches, what's the one thing that you would have them watch out for on a field, but also in a weight room if they're being part of that programming? Is there something in particular that you like to educate them on to get buy-in?
I just tell coaches you have to find a strength coach in your area who you've researched, built a relationship with, they get good results, and send all your players to them.
Mm-hmm.
I think too many clubs now are very closed off, at least in the soccer world. They either don't have a strength coach, or if they do have a club-wide strength coach, if the person's good, it might be pretty watered down, or they might not be able to work with all the teams, but the club still wants everyone training with their guy, but their guy can't handle all the hundreds of players they have, but they still don't want to refer out to a strength and conditioning professional in a private facility. That doesn't make sense to me, because you have hundreds of players, one guy, and you say you want to keep your players healthy and develop them. But yeah, there's just a disconnect there for me. And I really think coaches need to be less closed off and put the player first and their health first, and get them into a strength and conditioning facility in their area, and have a network of maybe 1, 2, or 3 strength coaches that they refer their players out to, really trusted people. So that's what I would tell coaches, because kids need that detailed attention from a professional. Not always large group. I mean, I'm fine with large group if we're all doing the same thing, like a speed session. But if it's strength and they're kind of on different programs, I like to have one coach for max 5 kids, 5 or 6 kids, because it's impossible to look at what everyone's doing on the gym floor. So that's what I would recommend, is coaches refer out and have a network.
Yeah, I mean, you had mentioned just briefly, you can't watch more than 5 or 6 kids. How can you manage and watch how they're landing on a single leg hop, or a drop
No.
squat, or stop, turn, change direction mobility? Like, you have to be focused on them. And if you're not doing it, you're not, doing the athlete justice. At what age do you start talking about nutrition and sleep with athletes? And is that something that you focus on with your teams?
Yeah, I like to introduce it as early as possible, but for the younger ones, maybe like early middle school, it's just more of the basics. I don't like to get too into the weeds with them. I want them to at least know what the macronutrients are, protein, fat, carbs, and what should be on your grocery list for those. And we'll do activities where we'll draw like a plate, and then you have to pick a protein, fat, or carb that you like. So just basics. And then, sometimes my high school girls will get a little bit deeper with, meal timing, snacks at tournaments. Some girls will ask about thoughts on supplements. I sometimes get detailed with it, but I like to just repeat the basics a lot. And I actually do have just like a general nutrition PowerPoint for everyone that I just send them, some good healthy options for proteins, fats, and carbs, and then snack options for the road, different electrolyte drinks that I really like besides Gatorade. I mean, Gatorade is sometimes the only option available at tournaments. So I still say, okay, have a Gatorade. That's the only option. But if you can buy your own electrolyte, there's certain brands that I recommend just for the potassium contents. It is better. The sodium content is better. Magnesium's included. So yeah, we'll do stuff like that. I like to do it as young as possible, but not in a way that's kind of what their parents do to them. I don't want to nag them, because that's when preteens and teen girls will go the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I just try to tell them, hey, here are the performance benefits of good nutrition. Here are the injury reduction benefits of good nutrition. So that usually gets them thinking about, just changing what they're doing in their nutrition a little bit.
Do you ever we get it from boys all the time, adolescent boys. Can I take this supplement? Can I take that? Do you get that from the female athletes or even the parents to try to improve performance?
I get, should I take creatine a lot? Because I think creatine's like the big one now on social media. And look, I think it is the most studied supplement, but if girls are getting, if they're having animal based meats or at least having steak a few times a week, I mean, you get enough creatine from that. It's not going to hurt you if you take it, but I think, just food first before supplements. And then I always warn people, be careful with things like vitamin D as well. I think some people freaked out during COVID and they're like, I need more vitamin D, which, yeah, some people are deficient in it, but some people just really need to get out in the sun, have more milk and dairy products, and they'll be okay. But you can overdo vitamin D. So get blood work done. If no 12-year-old wants to get their arm pricked, don't do that to a 12-year-old unless they have to. But yeah, in the teen years, if you want to know what's going on and what they're deficient in, vitamin D, iron's a big one to know, B12, and then looking at the hormonal panels, any thyroid issues, it would be good to know for teen athletes. I wish I did that back then, but I didn't.
What are some examples of the training and on-the-go snacks that you like? And what do you think of orange slices on the sideline at halftime?
Yeah, I mean, I do miss orange slices. I mean, they were hydrating. They had good water content, and yeah, I'm a big fan of fruit as hydration too. Watermelon is really good, and even just quick snacks like string cheese is great to get the protein and dairy and healthy fats. Beef jerky sticks are great. I really like chomps because they don't have a lot of extra crap in them and they taste really good. It's like a grass-fed beef stick. I like berries. Some people don't like nuts because they're too bland, but nuts are a good one. Even just quick yogurts, granola. And, a lot of the chain restaurants, I mean, they're everywhere now. So if you're at a tournament, there will always be a Starbucks. They have great fruit and cheese plates or whatever, wraps. The egg bites are good there. So you can still eat decent at a lot of these places. I think for young girls, it's more important to get in the energy than to worry about, oh, well, there's no clean food here, I'm not going to eat it. Well, no, you have to fuel first and foremost. And then, once you have that down, then maybe you can be a little bit more selective with your food if you're at home and you're cooking. But when you're at a Starbucks, you can't be selective. You just have to get something in before you play your next game, or you play your next game the next day. So there's ways to get snacks in. Even gas stations now, Wawa has a great selection of subs, wraps, different snacks, protein bars, kind bars. Pretzels are a good quick carb. So I think you can find something anywhere to really fuel well.
For anyone who's not on the East Coast, Wawa are the gas stations and convenience stores that originally started in Pennsylvania and have absolutely delicious sandwiches and snacks. So nice shout out to Wawa.
There is Wawas. Well, actually, I think New Jersey down.
Yeah, we don't have them. They don't have them in Boston.
No, there's no Wawas, just Shake Shack. For you as a strength conditioning coach, if you had one technology to use for an athlete to help assess them, what would that be?
Oh man, there's a few I use. I don't overdo it with the technology, but well, I like my timing system.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great for at least a high school athlete to know what their mile per hour is and top speed, because it's motivating, and when you see those improvements over time from doing a program, it's really great for the athlete. And if you have girls who want to play in college, you can kind of tell them where they're at right now, because
Mm-hmm.
I know what a lot of Division 1 girls are putting up in speed mile per hour. So if you're at a 14 mile per hour as a sophomore, I don't know if you'll play at a top D1 program, because those girls are getting like 20 miles per hour. But if you have a base of a 16 mile per hour, we can get you there in
Mm-hmm.
a few years. So I like my timing gates. It gets competitive in my sessions. And then I like my OVR jump because it measures reactive strength index. So being able to decelerate and then produce force quickly. So it's really good for the injury reduction side of things. I use it in my return to play strength and conditioning program. I'll have some girls come to me for the tail end of their return for ACLs. And that's a big clearance test, is a depth drop, bilateral and unilateral, looking at reactive strength index. So those would be my top two. And then I think technology, it's it's not all that. I think you still have to have the coach's eye too and just see how people move. And yeah, I think people shouldn't over tech their athletes. So I only use a few tools and then the player pulse for the load monitoring, but that's really it.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about that quite frequently on this show. Is that technology is great to have in the toolbox, but you need to know your athletes. And you alluded to that earlier. It's listening, right? Listening to them, understanding them. Dr. Andrews was talking to us about listening to his patients, but also listening to the mother that's coming in the exam room for what they need for their athlete. So I think it's an important piece. I think what's between our ears is probably the best thing that we can use. But technology is good. It helps us with some of the metrics of patients, or I think the parents want to see the numbers, right, in the data.
So you wrote the female athlete book. I think we know what inspired it. And for those who haven't read it, because it's actually written in a more relatable way than some of these books that are just instructing you what to do or giving your opinion, backed with real evidence and obviously your personal anecdotal experience, but it's relatively easy to read and easy to digest. So not only adolescents can read it, but parents can read it and then discuss it. So I think that's a nice fine line that you actually thread that needle perfectly. So it's like an excellent resource for the female athlete. What are a few takeaways that you think are important for parents or adolescent athletes to know about?
The most consistent messaging in the book is these girls have to strength train no matter what, just for their own health, improving their performance, but also just for their longevity and just the mental health benefits of it and the benefits that take them further than their sport ever will. Yes, I'm a strength coach, so I'm probably a little biased, but I think strength training is one of those things that you should continue to do when you're done playing sports, because we know it helps with reducing injury when you're older. It helps you to still be active and move and, not get aches and pains. It doesn't have to get bad when you get older. You just have to keep stimulating your body. So that's the most consistent message in the book. And then just doing the basics, just fueling properly, sleeping well, having at least a recovery day or two throughout your week. And it's really not complicated. But I do think people try to complicate these things, and the basics always win. They take more discipline and more time, but it's worth it. So that's the main theme from the book. And I've changed my view on the menstrual cycle discussion now that we know that the research is very unclear on when injuries occur. There's no phase we can point to where an ACL injury is more likely. So again, it brings us back to, what do we do? Do what we can control, because we can't control the menstrual cycle. We have to have one. Like, if you don't have one, that's not good for your health either. It's way worse. So you're going to have one as a girl. So all you can really do is front end it for injury reduction and do consistent strength training, fuel your body the best you can, and get those recovery days. And those things actually, if you do them well, they help with negative menstrual cycle symptoms. So if you're sleeping, recovering well, you're getting healthy fats and protein and good carbs in your diet, that actually mitigates a lot of the negative symptoms like fatigue and cramps that come with certain phases of the cycle. So that's another thing. It's like menstrual cycle's the output, kind of like mechanics, but strength, nutrition, sleep are the inputs that we need to focus on. We can't be focusing on the wrong thing here.
Do you educate on the female athlete triad of low energy, amenorrhea, and osteopenia, osteoporosis? Do you do a specific work with the athletes or the parents?
Not specifically. I have talked about it before, just the dangers of underfueling and overtraining and being overstressed, and just kind of how it's just a downstream effect with a lot of bone injuries and just musculoskeletal injuries, and even ACLs, since they are a result of fatigue and not enough capacity and recovery. So yeah, I just try to educate on all of it. I've given a lot of talks on menstrual cycle health and just making sure female athletes don't feel like death during certain weeks of the month. I'm very passionate about it because some female athletes think they have to always feel like death, but you can feel a little bit better if you eat well, hydrate well, and sleep well, you can mitigate the symptoms. So there's hope.
So I have one final question and then we have a rapid fire section that we do. It's like quick questions, quick answers.
Called the lightning round.
Lightning round. So the female athlete being the center of our conversation here in ACL injuries, it's kind of a two-pronged question. The people that are surrounding that athlete, what can we do better? So what should parents prioritize? And then also the second part of that is, what should coaches and clinicians stop overlooking when they're dealing with their athletes?
I'm going to say strength for both.
Okay.
Yeah, I think parents need to really look at their schedule and find a way to carve out time. And that could mean giving up something else, like giving up that extra skills training or something that's continuing to overuse the muscles and really not strengthen them. So, really getting clear on the schedule and carving out the time for at least one, maybe 2 times a week strength. And then coaches, they need to start talking about strength more and having that referral network. They can't be closed off anymore or ignore that this is a problem. Like their girls are weak and they need to get strong and do this consistently.
I'm going to quote you on that and tell all of my coaches that deal with female athletes that exact thing.
Good. We got to spread the word.
That's right.
Yeah, this is on the record now.
Strength in numbers. Cam, let's kick it off, man. You're question one here.
So we're going to do the lightning round. I just wrote this question. I just thought of this question, but these are rapid fire questions. So if you tore your ACL now, would you get it reconstructed?
I don't know, probably because I do track now. So it's linear, so I could probably get away with it. But I think mentally knowing I wouldn't have an ACL would make me hold back on my sprinting. So I'd probably get it. So I wouldn't have that mental block. And I know how to do my return to play. So in the later stages.
You could do your own you could do your own rehab.
Yeah, I would do my own rehab. Maybe not early stage. That's not my scope. I don't do any of the manual stuff, but late stage I'll do.
For sure.
We know a few other strength coaches that can help you if you need one in the Tampa area. One thing you wish you knew as a college athlete?
I wish I knew load management better. I wish my coaches did too. We had a pretty wild preseason. We actually had 2 or 3 ACLs in preseason alone that first week because the fitness tests, the 3 days were just too much and people didn't really understand load at the time. And I just did it. My teammates just did it, like thinking, oh, this is normal, but it's not really normal.
What's the most underrated exercise?
I think pull-ups. For female athletes, yeah. I think a lot of them don't really understand why they need to do it, especially soccer players. So they're like, oh, I don't really need this. I mean, should be all legs. But then they realize they need it for sprinting and just better body control and just better stability. And actually pull-ups, when girls come in on day one, it's like the exercise they're afraid of. But then after weeks of training, they're like, it's my favorite exercise. So it's kind of funny to see that.
Biggest myth about female athletes?
That a certain phase in the menstrual cycle causes ACL injuries. It's not true. There's no research to support it. The research is all over the place. So we can't make such a bold statement and drastic recommendation for people to train around a certain phase. It's crazy to me that we even did that.
What's your favorite recovery technique or tool?
Well, I like sleep and nutrition, but as an extra bonus, I like the Firefly recovery.
What is that?
It's like stim on steroids. Yeah, they were actually on Shark Tank, Firefly recovery. So you should watch the episode. It's very interesting.
One question that's not on here that I just thought of, because I was going to ask you earlier about the fear of a female going into the weight room. How do you address body image fear with the female athlete in weight training?
I just try to keep the focus on performance and just doing the things that support your sport and the demands that you have to undergo from week to week, year round. And I just tell girls, because of this training, I mean, you will be gaining muscle, but I haven't really had a lot of issues with girls making comments about their body in a negative way. I've actually had the opposite, because I think they do realize when I educate on the performance side, they're like, oh, wow, like my knee pain went away or I feel faster. And they're like happy they're gaining muscle, or they're like, oh, my quads are popping out. Oh, I can see my hamstring line. I always tell like my ACL return girls, if I can't see your quads or hamstring line, you're not ready to go back.
Mhm.
Like, so they get it. I haven't had too many issues because the focus has been performance, health, injury resiliency. And if you become frail and pencil thin, I mean, you're going to break. I mean, you're much more susceptible to even just some of the overuse injuries, that bone injuries that you shouldn't be getting.
So as an orthopedic surgeon, I have to ask, outside of knee injuries in your adolescent female athletes, what other injuries are you seeing most commonly?
I see a lot of girls coming to me with Osgood-Schlatter, and it's it's a weakness and doing too much of sport load problem,
Mhm.
as you know. And I think it's hard for parents to cut back on what they're doing in their schedule. Most of the Osgood-Schlatter girls who come to me, every time I ask what the schedule is, 3 times a week of practice, then on a Friday, skills trainer, Sunday, skills trainer, Monday, something else. And I'm like, where's your strength? And it's across the board. That's their schedule. And I'm like, I'm not surprised she has knee pain. Not
Mhm.
surprised. So that's like a big one. But I've had girls, I mean, I tell them, look, if you manage your sport load properly and you get in the gym, we can resolve this knee pain very quickly. Or if you don't listen to me, and I have seen these cases, you will have knee pain for one. I've seen some girls with 2 years because they didn't take care of it. So I tell people we can resolve this quickly, or if you don't want to listen, then that's on you. So that one, I see just tweaks in the hip, shin splints. I've seen a lot of it is vitamin D deficiency. Those girls will get their blood work done and they're in like the 20s or 30s. So, and they're also overusing and doing too much soccer. So those are the most common ones. What have you guys seen?
I mean, I see a lot of lower leg stuff, and usually it's footwear issue, and then them not understanding how to do lower foot mechanic activities or lower body mechanics and mobility activities, and they just don't hit the weight room. So we start doing a lot of what I call toe yoga. If they do that, helps a ton. Backing off their training schedules, right? The impact, and then also working on how to understand when footwear is important to change or to rotate footwear, because the first thing I look at is their shoes. And I said, when did you get these running shoes? Training shoes. I've had them for a year and a half. I'm like, do you realize after 300 miles, they're just throw them away? Like, it's not going to help you. So we educate a lot on that. But that's what I see in the Osgood-Schlatter, because I'm dealing with middle school and high school athletes. So we'll see it from
Mhm.
that age, 12 to 14. But again, if they address it right away and we get them in the weight room, we get them training, it goes away.
So I just thought of another one. This one's really sad to me. I'm seeing more and more compartment syndrome.
Hmm.
Chronic exertional compartment syndrome?
I've seen, yes, I've heard one of my girls, her sister, who I don't know why her sister didn't do the strength training before she was going into college preseason. I'm like, have her, do the strength training. That preseason's gonna be intense. She went to her college preseason and then started getting the burning feeling and continued to play through it. She had to get the compartment syndrome surgery.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then I heard another girl on one of my girls' travel teams, one of her teammates has to get the surgery.
Mm.
And I'm like, that's depressing because that should not be happening with these young kids. And it's scary too. I mean, when you look at it, it grosses me out. Like,
I think some of that comes down to on the parent and the coach, because again, we talked about this opening. It's the competitiveness and the ability for these athletes to play year round and try to, get to that next level of playing, and the private equity part of the sport. Like, it's really, to me, I'm finding a lot more athletes are withholding information and not telling you because the fear of not being able to play when we could have taken care of this as a normal, acute injury. And then they
yep.
come to us, several weeks later or longer with symptoms that are numbness, tingling, loss of vascular function. And now they're out for an entire season, and hopefully they don't have to have a surgical procedure where they have a fasciotomy or they have to have that, four compartment release. So for us, we don't see a ton of it. We do get some kids with medial tibial stress syndrome or MTSS, and we treat that and it goes away if they get to see we send them to Children's Boston as one of our primary caregivers for youth athletes. But if we see this and address it and educate, it gets better. But I find that there are some pressures from within, right? Coaching, other players, and parents as well.
For medial tibial stress syndrome, how long is the recovery on average?
I would say typically we see they're probably non-impact for 6 weeks, trying to control symptoms, get them stronger, get them more mobile, get rid of the symptoms, and start to integrate back into work. You probably don't miss the entire season, but some kids are kind of on the cusp. But we have to make sure they don't have stress reaction, and that's repetitive, imaging probably after 6 weeks. They'll check it again. But I've had one in the past 3 years. So for us, again, we're not as year-round as you are down south. But the kids come to us right away because they know what we can do for care. And I think part of it is that I've been in where I am for a long time. The kids trust what we do and how we evaluate and treat. So if you have that good education, patients understand what you can do for them, what you provide, how to get them back on the field or the court, then they'll come see you. If you don't have that and you don't have someone to go to, there's less of that. So I'm sure you see it more in the youth kids that are really not in a high school setting or collegiate setting yet. They're playing more youth and starting to come up through the U programs. You might see more of the kids that are more chronic. Cam?
No, we're good. That was amazing.
Good. Erica, thanks for coming on. This is fantastic. I think this was a great episode.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Erica. This was awesome.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening to Behind the Sports Medicine Podcast. Follow us on social media and check out our website.
The information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please consult a licensed healthcare provider for guidance related to your specific situation. We'll see you next week.